Yo, what's up? This is Splendid Radio on PharcydeTV with this week's episode. We got Jeremy Scipio back in the place. You know what I'm saying? He was out there doing bigger and better things.
medium things.
Yeah, we had to bring him back in for this interview. So today we got a guy who's very dear to my heart. I can honestly say I saw him I saw the evolution of Virgil Grant from a guy who just we're kind of like kindred spirits. I saw his hustle. We ended up meeting through a childhood buddy, and I just for the time that I've known Virgil, he was just strictly about cannabis, but it wasn't. It's crazy because even before cannabis was legal, there was ethics. There was like an ethical way that he went about it, just as far as just what he was doing, that let me know he was like a different kind of dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? So with that being said, we're gonna get into who he is, but I just had to kind of build that up a little bit to just let people know. So we're gonna switch up the format of the show just a little bit. So we're gonna lightly tap on it. So real quick, Virgil, when was the first time you heard hip hop?
Ooh, first time I heard hip hop. If I could remember, of course, Rapper's Delight, because they played that on the radio. But the second one after Rapper's Delight was Super Rhyme. And I remember 1970, it was 78 or 79, this kid that was, who really was originally from New York, lived in the neighborhood. And he had the Super Rhyme album, and we went over to his house and listened to it. So, that was really my, Rapper's Delight and on KDAY or KGFJ. Those were the two radio stations we had back in the day, KGFJ and KDAY, K-Day. Yeah. So, man, that was in the 70s.
And K-Day had a whole lot of static, you know what I'm saying, back then.
AM, KDAY. Yeah, so.
You still there?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
I was gonna say, who's your favorite hip hop stoner?
My favorite hip hop stoner?
Yeah.
Let's see, who really smoked weed, hip hop stoner? Now that's a darn good question, because a lot of those cats that first came out in our era, they weren't in the open with smoking weed like we were back in the day. So, I mean, or like the rappers are today. Yeah. If I was to say my favorite hip hop stoner, I would have to give credit to Snoop.
Hey.
Yeah, I would have to say Snoop being my favorite hip hop stoner.
I'll tell you something I just found out today. I was watching on Vanity Fair. They have this segment called Lie Detector, right? They have different people on. They just want to see if you tell the truth. You can't lie, but the graph, it goes nuts when you do. Obviously, they had 50 Cent on, and they said, "Who's the biggest stoner or something like that?" And it was like. They said, Wiz Khalifa. And they were like, what? They said, more than Snoop Dogg? No, more than Snoop Dogg? They go, absolutely. And then he said, on the thing, he said, he's telling the truth. And I've never heard anybody smoke more weed than Snoop Dogg. So then they asked Wiz Khalifa the same thing. They said, who smoked more between you and Snoop Dogg? He goes, definitely me. And he said, well, Snoop say that? He goes, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Right on.
So getting into Virgil's story, I just wanted to kind of build it up to let people know Virgil's a personable guy. He's, you know what I'm saying? He's strictly business when you're in the doors of his Soto location, Crenshaw or Melrose. But I was going to before I found out that the show needed to be reduced a little bit. We're gonna talk a little bit about his track career and all that kind of stuff. But let's just hop straight up into the gravy of it. What city did you grow up?
So I always have to say, I say Compton because, the true story is we moved around a lot. So my mom was, you know, we weren't rich, we were poor. And we moved. We probably stayed in an apartment or a house for like a year, maybe 14 months at best before we was moving to the next spot. Don't know why the instability was there. Don't know if it was more finances. I don't know, because as a kid, you don't understand or know those things. All you know is that you're moving around a lot. And when we got to Compton, we sat in Compton a little bit longer than any city I moved in, and then Linwood. So Linwood, but I spent majority of my years of my life, when you talk about young and older put together, in Compton. I spent my younger years in Linwood, and a lot of Compton kids went to Linwood. Compton and Linwood have a relationship, because that borderline right there is Compton. As soon as you walk out of Linwood High School and you walk up the block, you in Compton at the Compton swap meet. So you could see from Linwood's field the Compton swap meet and vice versa. So Compton being that close, it was a shared relationship between a lot of Compton and Linwood people. Hence, Suge went to Linwood High, graduated in '84, but lived in Compton, and so on and so forth. The list goes on of people who lived in Compton that went to Linwood. So, you know, but Compton is a city I basically made my, you know, made my bones in that city, if I could say.
Okay. At what point did you realize you wanted to be a cannabis activist?
When I indulged in cannabis in reference to sales, not consumption, but sales. What I saw, you have to keep in mind that the era I grew up in. I grew up in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, 80s. All I saw in my life was hustlers, be it the Mac, pimps, hustlers, or I grew up seeing drug dealers in the 80s and the late 70s. So the hustle, and even old school cats would tell you, you know, youngster, you got to keep a job, but you got to have a hustle too, right? So that's how the old schoolers used to tell me. So hustle was the mentality. And even if it was a job, it was a hustle. They called their job a hustle. So everything was with that hustle mentality. So when I started, or even when I even got introduced to cannabis, which was at the liquor store from a Jamaican dude, I only saw it for sales. And he saw it for sales for me as well when the introduction became. So I, you know, took my check and went and bought me a quarter ounce at $175. And that was all she wrote.
Yeah, man. So
is it on me?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you learn from your experience owning and operating a cannabis location in Compton?
What did I learn from my experience? So I have to turn that around. My experience came from running my dad's liquor stores in the city of Compton, which taught me how to open up and run a cannabis shop. So my skills came from two places, the streets and business, which almost operate simultaneously when you're in a liquor store. So you dealing with the streets, especially after dark, in the city of Compton, liquor store, after 8 or 9, 10 o'clock, that's when, you know, hey, it gets real active at night. And so from that point on until 2 a.m, which our stores were open at 2 a.m, I was dealing with the element. That taught me and gave me the groundwork to be able to open up a cannabis shop and run my first cannabis shop in the city of Compton. What I learned from running that cannabis shop, I learned a lot from that liquor store that taught me how to run that cannabis shop.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because Virgil and I talk a lot about how, our fathers kind of positioned us to have experience younger in life with just dealing with a variety of different kinds of people and dealing with customer service and sales and all that kind of stuff. And those are the tool sets that both of us are able to bring into our careers as men right now. Like, and you didn't think about it when you're in the thick of it. It was more like you were surviving. That's really what you were doing, is surviving. But years later, 20 years, 30 years later, you're like, man, I have this skill set where I'm able to deal with people. And it's amazing how I have an edge on other people, and how to other people dealing with people is really foreign. Like, people don't like, especially with the climate and the culture that we have right now, kind of like this jiffy pop culture where people really don't even talk. They just kind of text message each other and stuff like that. Well, for Virgil working in that liquor store, I've been in that liquor store where I've seen everything from the Jerry curled out, gang banging his gangster, rolling up, bumping in a Cutlass, get out the car and go and holler at Virgil. And I'm just up there like, geez. And he's able to communicate with that cat, to Virgil being able to communicate with, let's say, a dude in a suit. You know what I'm saying? It just like a skill set of learning how to deal with people. So with you cutting your teeth at the liquor store, with you having your first dispensary in Compton, at what point did you see the legal green rush coming? Let's say if you could put a year to it.
Okay, so we talking late 80s, early 90s. So we talking maybe 89, 90. I was dealing with cannabis, but I always saw it as legal, if I could say that. I guess the way I carried myself as if it was legal. I never felt I was doing anything wrong, never thought I was doing anything wrong. And I ran things like it was legal. So in my mind, I always saw legalization. I never felt that cannabis should have been illegal. And I was surrounded by many drugs: cocaine, sherm, pills, uppers, downers, quaaludes, red devils, weed, back in the day, cess with the seeds, sticks, and stems. I was always around that type of element. But with seeing that, I was able to say cannabis should never be illegal, should never be like these drugs, because I watched what that did to, I even watched what alcohol did to people. You know what I'm saying? But cannabis, I never saw cannabis do anything wrong. So in my mind, I always felt that it was legal. When did I think it was going to become legal? When I started seeing legislation being pushed and didn't pass, I knew that it was gaining traction. So you got to keep in mind, 1995, it hit the ballot. 1994, it hit the ballot. 1995, it hit the ballot. And then 1996, it came again. I knew that then it would catch more traction than it did. And that's when the CUA, the Compassionate Use Act, passed in the state of California. And once that, really the compassionate use was passed throughout the country, but California mainly. When the CUA passed the Compassionate Use Act, which is your Prop 215, when that passed, that was huge for a lot of people for cannabis consumption. Now, keep in mind, the cannabis industry went through its phases. And when I say that, it had its time and place. We were fighting the generation before us, your Jack Herrera's, your Eddie Lepps, your Ed Rosenthal's, your Mark Emery's. Those people were just fighting to consume cannabis, right? That cannabis not be illegal to consume. You know what I mean? That was really what it was. And it really wasn't consumption, is that cannabis and hemp should not be illegal. That was the phase back then. When we came into the fight, it had already been legalized. So our fight was now to be able not to just consume cannabis, but to actually sell, trade, give away cannabis. So that was our fight when my fight and generation came in. And I say my generation fight, it was after the Jacks had fought for Prop 215 and SB 420. We were now fighting, okay, we have cannabis, we can consume cannabis legally. Now we are wanting to sell cannabis because now how they gonna get it? We now have to have safe access. You no longer have to go through the alleyway or go through the trap shop or go in this into the crack house, or what they had was weed houses back in the day, which looked just the same, right? You never had to meet your dealer on the corner no more or in a parking lot. Right now, we were fighting for safe access, so people to access this cannabis in a safe and lit environment. That was our fight, and that's what you see today. So, how I feel, or when did I think that cannabis should be legal, or when did I think it was going to be legal? Yes, around 1996, at the latest 1997, I felt would be the last point of it being legal to consume. When did I think it was going to be legal to sell? When we were in the fight, and this was in 2000, maybe 5, 4. We was having that fight, so roughly around there, and that's when I opened up my shop in Compton.
So I watch the Cleveland show, and so there was this episode where Cleveland had went back in time and he was talking to his younger self, and he was telling his younger self, buy Apple stock. But Cleveland was like, buy applesauce? Okay, applesauce. So instead of buying Apple stock, he bought all this applesauce. So I have a moment like that with Virgil, where I remember being in his Compton location, and he was like, Greg, you need to get on this, man. He was like, man, you need to be on this. And he had the whatever legislation was out at that time, he had it posted up. I mean, his dispensary was pretty impressive, man. I mean, it was like a doctor's office, and so he had the little laws posted up on the wall. And so he was pointing to him, he's like, Greg, you better get on this. You better get on this. And I remember saying to him, I was like, man, I don't want to be a martyr, man. Like I see what you're saying, but I don't want to be a martyr. And so I say that to say Virgil has truly fought the fight for this whole cannabis situation. And like, man, I look back at it, and the good thing about it is, after Virgil got back home from going away for a minute, he came to me, and we ended up seeing each other on a fluke at it was a seafood restaurant or whatever, man. And it was crazy because I wasn't even thinking about him. And I was looking down and I saw a little birthday party going on. And I was like, oh, and it was a whole bunch of girls, like little young girls. So I was like, oh man, that's the homeboy. So I went over there, slipped in my number or whatever. And when we met, he said, how do you want to be involved? And I was like, man, if you could just let me do your printing, man. You know what I'm saying? If you just get me in on that, like, I'm good with it. And so I've been able to watch Virgil from his Compton location to that being closed down to him going away for a while. Now, one of the interesting things about Virgil, since he did go to prison in this fight for cannabis, I think it's pretty impressive that he hires people, or he has hired some people who've been in prison to come and to help him at his establishments. What made you want to hire people who'd been to prison in your dispensaries, Virgil?
The reason why is because people coming out of prison are looked at different by society, as if sometimes they can't be productive, they won't make it, whatever the case may be. And I'm about really destroying those myths. The problem is they're not given an opportunity, not a fair opportunity. So let me explain to you what happened. When I came home, I went to the halfway house. When I went to the halfway house in order to go on home, what they call home confinement, which means you can go home, but you're still on a curfew, you have to have a job. So I went and got a job, right? The job I could only get was making $9 an hour. But staying at the halfway house, I had to pay them 25%. I mean, even when I went on home confinement, I had to pay them 25% of my $9 an hour check, right? Just think about that time in 2014, 15, what the economy was like. One, how I was going to survive on a $9 an hour job, and then the government taking 25% of that. Is that really a fair opportunity? Is that a fair shake in life? No, not really, especially when you coming home trying to make it. And if you was one of those cats that was in the hustle game and now you sitting there working for $9 an hour, or you got some form of education, you can imagine what that $9 an hour job looked like or consisted of. Definitely was a manual labor job. So to say all that is that I wanted to hire people and give them a real opportunity at life, that second life that they were given when they were released from prison. And because I know nobody else wanted to hire them, so why not me?
Well, what cultural impact do you feel like cannabis becoming legal had?
I'm sorry?
What cultural impact do you feel cannabis becoming legal had?
Cultural impact. I would have to say cannabis had a cultural impact on the legalization, not vice versa. You understand what I'm saying? So just the fact that cannabis was now being on TV, the Chronic album, you seeing people, rappers, Cypress Hill and all the rest of them smoking weed on TV and so on and so forth, influenced the push for more legalization. Snoop and the rest of them that were icons within the industry, Tupac and Biggie, and all of the rappers that were influential within the generation that probably exists in politics today, were influenced by that type of culture of cannabis. So I think it's just the opposite. I think that the rap game influenced legalization versus vice versa.
Mm-hmm. What price would you say that you paid for the legalization of cannabis?
I would say I paid ultimately one of the ultimate prices for the legalization of cannabis. When you sacrifice years of your life to be taken away from your family, I mean, what other price than that for cannabis? You know what I'm saying? And so, that was like the ultimate price to pay. But I stood firm and was willing to pay it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't flinch on it. I didn't duck around it. I didn't bob and weave through it. But, I bobbed and weave, but you know what I'm saying? I didn't bob and weave. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, when I knew that it was time to succumb to the situation, I paid the ultimate price, man. But it was a price I was willing to pay. And when people say, "Oh, I'm really for cannabis. I believe in cannabis," and I have to beg to differ and ask the question, really? What are you willing to give? What price are you willing to pay? Because a lot of them
we did.
Somebody finally chimed in too.
Yeah. So, well, we had him for a minute, man. That's the
you think he's gonna come back?
Yeah. No, we can wait. So with you, Jeremy, you've been doing quite a few stand-ups, man.
Yeah, man, been busy. I've been busy. I've been all over the place. I did a show in Houston last Wednesday, I believe. Thursday, something like that. It was refreshing doing like an all black, like real black crowd. I mean, that's the closest. I never performed in Atlanta, but that was the closest to performing in Atlanta I've been.
Is it pretty opened up in Texas?
Yeah. They don't care about none of this stuff.
No mask, no nothing, no
black. I tell you, I walked into places. I walk in with a mask, and people looking at me funny. So I was like, all right, I put the mask on. No, I take the mask off. I'm like, all right, because I didn't want, like people look at you. It's like a cultural thing. Then I go into other places, I have a mask off. They look at me funny. I'm like, all right, dang. So I was just constantly doing this all day, just trying to make sure. But yeah, I say the people down there, from my experience, I was only down there one day. So people were more, I would say friendly, just more open. Is he back?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes, sir.
So I suffered some technical difficulties, but I'm back.
That's right. That's right. I appreciate it.
Hey, you know what? Let me tell you something, man. I done been there before. They tried to take me out the game, and I done came back on that ass. Hey, so this is just another one like the other one.
Hey, Virgil, real quick. As soon as you logged out, so we had somebody chime in for you. They said, "This Lance from Los Angeles. Keep keeping it real, Virgil. We need your help so we can to have the power back, power to the people." So I feel like they feel like you've been empowered. I said delivery license.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. What I did and what they're speaking on is a social equity program that I created in the city of Los Angeles. I created that program. It didn't benefit me because I didn't qualify for social equity because I already own 3 retails in the city of LA, which means I had met my cap that LA was going to allow us to get. So creating the social equity program helped others, people of color, mainly Black folks, that, lived in marginalized communities. So yeah, man, big ups to the brother that's doing well with his thing. Now, I will say, I didn't intend for social equity to go the way it went once it got into the hands of DCR and politics and bureaucrats. It didn't go the way that I set it forth and I intended it to go completely. If I would have stayed and could have stayed in control of it, it'd have went a lot better than it did, a lot quicker and a lot faster of getting people licensed. But I am glad it did, and it is helping some people.
When you got out of prison, what made you want to go back into the cannabis industry?
What made me want to go? So I was walking the track about a month before I was released with a cat that I've become real close with and acquainted with. And it was a couple of cats, Al and Stevie. These was cats that I was doing time with. We became close. So they asked me, they say, "Man, what you gonna do when you get out?" I said, "Shit, what you think I'm gonna do when I get out?" That's like asking a electrician that's been an electrician for 30 years, what he gonna do when he get out? What you think he gonna do? Right? So my mind was already made up before release. I knew where I was going. I knew what I was gonna do. I knew what my destiny was. I knew before I came to prison and after I got out of prison what I was here to do. And it was to represent for Black people in the cannabis industry. And you got to keep in mind, I'm the only Black-owned, Black-funded business in the city of Los Angeles, damn near in the country. I didn't go out and get no crowd fund. I didn't go out and get no suit and tie Wall Street money. I didn't get these rich white investors that come in. No, these came off of me, my pockets, in the streets of Compton. That's how I was funded. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference between me. And I don't care how many Black faces stand behind a brand, Mike Tyson, and I can name, and the list goes on. Their money did not fund their brand. There were white people that approached them to create a brand using their name, Whoopi Goldberg and the rest of them. So when you talk about somebody like myself, who's been an old school player from day one, it was my own money. Black funded.
So I remember going over to the Soto location when it was just a big spot, like literally it was a big spot. And I remember, man, my mind, I always like to know how people make money, and I ask questions. And Virgil's, like I got a lot of friends like Virgil that are doing their thing. And, I can't ask every question, but, they look at me like, well, man, Greg, shit, we'll toss him a nugget here, there, whatever. And I remember going into his Soto location, which is huge. I mean, it is huge. And I remember asking him, like, when is it going to be ready? And I remember it being like maybe before summer when he started. And I know that it was finished before Christmas. So how long did it take you to build out your Soto location? From the moment that you realized that you wanted to have that spot and you signed the lease, how long did it take for you to get that location operational?
It only took me maybe a month and a half at best, because the landlord wasn't giving me too much time free in advance. So I would have been paying to be there and not making any money. So I made sure I had a crew in there working day and night to get that place up and running. So at least the retail, if nothing else, I needed retail up and running. So I'd say probably about maybe 30 to close to 60 days to get that retail up and running. That was retail only, not cultivation, not manufacturing. When we talk about the other components, it was another year after that. So it took me a couple of years, I would say, to get everything in full swing the way it is, and then longer with cultivation, because that was a different animal. So I didn't get cultivation built in there until maybe 3 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it, how important is it to have, actually, you know what, before I get to that one, somebody had another question they wanted from the group chat. They said, how much more difficult is it for a Black person to own and operate compared to a white person?
Oh, it's really difficult. It's more difficult because of access to capital. It's more difficult because things aren't laid out to us. We got to figure it out. We don't have the resources to access certain things. Knowledge of running a business and knowledge of running a cannabis business without spending a ton of money on somebody who's going to suck you dry and still don't give you the right information.
Those attorneys.
Yeah, attorneys, and then fake people that say, we're going to teach you how to open up your own location. And they never opened up a location one day in their life. So you go spend thousands upon thousands on that attorney and that person creating a corporation, everything, and you still walk away with nothing tangible or solid or practical that you can use to be successful in running a cannabis business. Very difficult. That's why I extend myself to people who want to come into the industry, that I don't mind mentoring and teaching them how to open up their own cannabis shop so that they can be successful. It's difficult. People think it's just, I'm gonna open up. It's like running a t-shirt, sock shirt, socks and draw shop or something, or running a apparel shop, clothing shop. No, it's a lot more to it. It's a lot more regulated, and there's a lot to it in order to open up one of these shops. So as far as Black folks getting in this industry, it's going to be very difficult, but it's not impossible. So that I do want to say, difficult, but not impossible. But what hasn't been difficult for us? Matter of fact, what hasn't been impossible for us that we haven't conquered?
That's right. How's COVID affected your business?
Not really, to be honest with you. It was, so when COVID first hit, there was a spike because you got to keep in mind, COVID hit and then there was a curfew put on the city, and then there was a civil unrest. All this kind of came in almost like one right after another. Civil unrest, COVID, civil unrest, whichever came first. And it almost operated simultaneously. So people went into a panic mode and said, shoot, we got to go out and go buy as much cannabis as we can if we're going to be on lockdown. So that was a boost and helped me, right? And then when they were on lockdown, then it dropped. And then when COVID hit, it dropped. And then it spiked back up and then it dropped. So we went on a roller coaster ride. If you were to say, what was our average? We averaged out as normal because the highs were highs and the lows were lows. So you could just put us in, if you were just to say consistency and just give me, a rough estimate of where how business was, it was basically at the end of the day, it was average. It was basically okay. We weren't truly affected that much. Slight drop, but not much. Nothing that I'm gonna cry or complain about.
Do you feel like it's important to have multiple hustles? And if so, like how many do you feel like is the median number?
If you're not working a job making $200,000 to $300,000 a year, and that's what's going to make you sustainable in California, and let's keep it real, man. Shoot, you're going to pay $3,000 for the average apartment, and that's not even going to be in a nice neighborhood. The economy out here is high. Things cost. The house in Compton costs $500,000. You're paying 500 and some thousand for a house in Compton, and off the east side. So, the cost of living is through the roof right now, and you got to have multiple hustles if you're not making that kind of money. Some people are working 2 jobs. Some people working 3 jobs. I say get a skill instead of a job. And we used to hear this back when we were young. Youngster, you got to get a skill. And a skill will take you where you want to go in life. We didn't really understand it, but I get it now. You do have to have a skill because sometimes a job ain't just going to cut it. And take that skill and become entrepreneurs. Create your jobs, create your lane, your space of what you love to do. And I go at it 100% and don't let nobody tell you anything else. And you can create your own space and your lane and your own business.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, from somebody also.
Yeah, go ahead.
How are California tax laws different from other states?
High as heck. As they say, high as giraffe, you know what. But no, it's high. It's ridiculous. We're taxed in so many areas around the board. You have other states that only have one tax. You got to look at other states are not licensed through municipality. They're licensed through the state. So that one tax, we're licensed through the municipality, which is the city, and then we're licensed by the state. So we're double taxed. We're taxed by the city and the state. So we pay multiple taxes. We pay city tax, state tax, sales tax, cannabis tax. It's a lot of taxes at the end of the day. It's almost 40%.
So question, if someone wanted to come and they were interested in working in, we'll say your dispensary, but working in a dispensary period, what would be the process that they would go through in order to work in a dispensary?
Fill out an application like they do at any other job. Apply. You just got to apply. We're no different than any job on the face of this earth. You come in and apply. We have an application just like any old application. You fill it out. You go through an interview process. You go through training. And if you make it through training, you get the job. If you don't, you don't. It's nothing different. There's nothing different about this.
What is the importance of cannabis being tested and regulated?
Super important. Cannabis has to be tested, and it has to be tested because there are things that cultivators have used and some still use to this day to grow cannabis when we were ignorant and we really didn't know, we used a lot of pesticides for bugs and things that we were trying to fend off and help our plants fight. There were a lot of growth hormones and things that were not good and safe to use to grow product because we wanted a bigger yield. And somebody told us this will help us get a bigger yield. So we used it because that's sometimes how you learn, by somebody telling you, but we never looked deep into it to see that the ingredients were harmful ingredients. And a lot of us, when we learned, we stopped using that product, those that cared. Now you're forced to stop using that product if you want to go into the legal market, because now regulations say you have to have it tested. And so there is a parameter that won't allow certain products in due to lack of, due to not testing, right? So regulations and testing, that part is great. It's a good thing. And it's good for the consumer because you're not smoking a bunch of carcinogenics. You're not smoking things that ultimately become harmful to your system, especially if you're using it for medicinal purposes.
What's the difference between a legal and illegal cannabis shop?
A license for one thing, approval from the city and the state, tested product, safe environment. You won't go through a raid in a legal shop, but you could be going in to buy cannabis in an unlicensed shop, and next thing you know, you're gonna be handcuffed by the police because they're raiding the shop. Somebody can rob the shop, and who are they gonna call? Because they're illegal, so they can't call the police, right? So you now put a lot of your customers and patients at risk when a jacker or people that have ill intentions know that you can't call the police. So they figure that's low-hanging fruit, easy prey. But shoot, what if you in the shop shopping and they hold up the shop? They might, and you lay you down, rob you, or pistol whip you just because you in the way. So anything could happen in an illegal shop versus a legal shop. Now, I'm not saying that can't happen in a legal shop, less likely to, because they know we can call the police and that person will get convicted and go to jail, right? So with those other shops, they 9 times out of 10 don't call the police. The bad guy won't get caught, convicted, and go to jail.
Speaking of that, I'll tell you something funny. I probably shouldn't say this, but I got to. It's too irresistible. You set it up. So when Virgil had, I won't say the location, but he had one of his shops. He's always a stickler for like high-tech booby trappage and all kinds of stuff. And I mean, this one shop, he had it rigged up where if somebody broke in, they was not gonna get out until the sheriff came, man. I mean, he had stuff where it looked like you opening and you locking and all kinds of stuff, whatever. And you would be trapped up in that room until the sheriff came. So with that being said, Virgil has to break out and go and close up a couple of his shops. But I got one last little question for him. Where do you see social interaction going in the next 5 years with this whole COVID stuff?
I would say COVID is getting ready to die down real soon because you got to look at it. A great portion of the country caught COVID. Now all the kids are catching COVID, which means their antibodies are building up towards this virus. And now it won't affect them so harshly. And COVID will be just like the flu, which is really, like they say, the flu on steroids. Well, you know, the majority of the people in the country have caught COVID, and those and some that don't know they caught COVID and had COVID and it didn't affect them in any kind of way. Because we know that I know people that have caught COVID and it didn't affect them one way or the other. They went on quarantine, didn't bother them one bit, felt like maybe a little throat problem for a day or so, and that was it. I say that due to the fact of the immunization shots or the vaccine shots, as well as the many people that have already caught COVID, this thing will be like considered like a common cold. These face masks will be going soon. They will not be sticking around much longer. The numbers have gone down, but they're not reporting that. They only report when the numbers go up. They definitely didn't report that the numbers of people who got vaccinated increased on catching COVID versus the ones that didn't. You see what I'm saying? They won't let those numbers loose, but that's a true fact. And I'm not against going to get your vaccination or whatever. Do what you feel is right for you and your family. But you gotta look at the facts. They say follow the science. I follow the facts. You know, and the facts tell me, you know, I got one of my best friends who's right now sick as a dog. He know he caught COVID, but he's been double vaccinated. Sick as a dog. De La Hoya in the hospital. Sick as a dog, double vaccinated. You know what I'm saying? So how do you encourage people to go get double vaccinated when people that got double vaccinated end up still in the hospital sick as a dog? Some people who don't believe in it going to take their chance at just catching COVID and deal with COVID versus dealing with the shot and COVID.
All right. Well, no, man, before we get them people on us, because this is on YouTube, so, you know, we done threw out the V word and not Virgil, you know what I'm saying? We done threw out the C word, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, not cannabis, you know what I'm saying? So with that being said, man, I really appreciate this, Virgil.
Hey, but one quick thing, smoke cannabis and you'll defend yourself against COVID. I can tell you that. Smoke cannabis, don't catch COVID.
That's right.
That's
and starting next Tuesday, we're gonna get the time together. I'm sure it'll probably be a time slot before Splendid Radio, but Virgil's gonna jump off his Tokum Tuesday podcast. Co-hosted with Slink Johnson, so it's gonna be interesting. People going and see, he's gonna go in deeper into subjects and kind of break down the conversation we've had tonight, kind of into micro doses, where he can kind of expand on little things and go, because there's a lot that he didn't cover. Like it would have just been too much to just try to touch everything, but I felt it was still an interesting interview. So with that being said, do you have anything you want to shout out for the week coming up, Jeremy?
The week. Next weekend, I say this weekend. Next weekend I'll be at Philly. Helium. I'm doing Helium in Philadelphia. Yeah, I think it's yeah. I'm also in Chicago. But anyway, yeah, I'll be in Helium. I'll get more details, but yeah, I'd say more details. Follow me at Jeremy Comedy. I'm pretty prompt when it comes to that stuff. So
yeah, man, we're gonna be having some comedy jams down at the either the Soda or the Melrose California cannabis location, man.
Hey, so gotta have it.
Yo, me and Slink was actually talking about that, man. I didn't know you know Slink. I was gonna bring up something, but I'll bring it up next time.
Yeah. And then Virgil, you want to give out your social media information?
Yes, at CaliforniaCannabisWC.com. At California Cannabis WC. Well, it's not actually the .com, but if you punch in at California Cannabis, spell it out, WC, it'll pop up. You'll see the CC like you see right here on my shirt. You'll see the CC pop up. Make sure it has the WC on it. And that's me. You can follow us there. We have a lot going on our social media. Tomorrow's Wake and Bake Wednesday. Hey. You know, we got Token Tuesday, which was today. We had Manic Monday, which we was giving away goods there. We have something 7 days a week. So come out to us at our 3 locations, 7415 Crenshaw Boulevard, 654 North Manhattan Place, and 1601 South Soto Street, California Cannabis.
What was that website again? California Cannabis what?
The website is www.californiacannabiswc.com.
WC.com. Okay.
Yes.
Well, good looking out, Virgil. We're going to let you get to your square biz, and I appreciate you. And once again, man, you motivate me whenever I feel like I'm getting lazy or slowing down. I realize that owning your own business means you got to get up from the dinner plate, man.
Got to get up from the dinner table and handle your biz. 24/7 is owning your own business. You know what I'm saying? But that's that's the price you pay for being an owner.
Yeah.
If you don't want these hours, then work a 9 to 5 where you got the weekends off and go party and have a good time. That's not what I was looking for.
That's right. Well, no, man, thanks for tapping in, and we'll bring you back in. You have a good week, Jeremy. You have a good week, Virgil. Splendid.